I trust you were encouraged from God's word this weekend, encouraged by our worship together, whether that was here in person at church in one of our 3 services, or whether that was watching the live stream or some of the other videos we've sent out. I trust that God's word has been encouraging to you and you've been able to worship Him. There's a passage that I've been encouraged with this past week, I've been challenged with, I've been trying to put into practice in my own life, and that is Ephesians chapter 4, verses 1 to 6. I'll read that for you. It says, I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you to walk worthy of the calling by which you were called, with all lowliness and gentleness, with long-suffering, bearing with one another in love, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit of the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called into one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God, and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in you all. As I have been challenged with this, the things that have stood out to me and I've been trying to implement in my own life is Paul starts out and he tells them to walk worthy of the calling by which they were called. He's saying you have a standard of living, and then he goes on to explain that. He says that they would live with lowliness, or the ESV says humility, with gentleness, with long-suffering, bearing with one another in love, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit of the bond of peace. That is Paul's desire for the church in Ephesus, that they would be humble, that they would be gentle to one another, that they would be long-suffering, that they would bear with one another, that they would seek to keep the unity and the bond of peace. As I've been trying to think through this in my own life, it's easy for us to dwell on the things that we don't have still. Whether that's here at church and the way the services are, or whether it's the way work is, the way our social lives have not gotten back to normal, or there's all these different things that we don't like the way they are. As we think about what this means for us as Christians, how do we live? How do we respond? How do we live worthy of the calling by which we've been called? I think it's important for us, especially here in church and as we fellowship and interact with other believers, that we practice humility, that we show gentleness, that we're long-suffering, that we bear with one another, even when things might not be the way we want them or the way we think they should be, that in humility and gentleness and in long-suffering we would bear with one another, that we would promote unity rather than our own preferences, that we would promote peace instead of our own opinions. And this is something I've been trying to preach to myself, because this is something in my own life I struggle with. I have opinions, I have preferences, I have things I want to be done a certain way. But it's important for me to practice humility, to practice gentleness, to bear with one another, to be long-suffering, and to promote unity and peace rather than my preferences. So my challenge this morning for you is the same challenge I have in my own heart this week. That I would live worthy of the calling of Christ. That you would live worthy of the calling by which you are called. That we would practice humility. That we would practice gentleness, long-suffering. That we would be bearing with one another. All for the purpose of maintaining unity and peace in our church.